Healing the gut. This is a topic of huge interest right now, and so many people are looking to gut healing as there is new science and data that comes out almost on a daily basis that ties poor gut health to everything from weight loss resistance to joint pain, inflammation, eczema, skin disorders, depression, anxiety, mood disorders, not to mention that immediate firestorm of indigestion, IBS, bloating, gas, all of those things that people are dealing with. So is the carnivore diet the final frontier? Is this what will really help you to heal your gut? Let's talk about it. Welcome back. My name is Sarah. I am known as Carnivore Yogi. Thank you so much for being here and clicking on today's video. Please hit the like button while you're here. So today's video is an interview with my friend Sylvia, who was known as Biohacking Chick over on Instagram. She has since changed her name to Sylvia. So you can follow her over there for daily stories and updates. But I wanted to talk with her because she's been on quite a journey to heal her gut. And there is a lot of talk that just an elimination diet alone will be enough to heal the gut. For me, that was not true, and for her, that was definitely not true after doing the carnivore diet for 3 years. So I think this is valuable information for you guys, but I did want to throw a couple little disclaimers up before we jump into the full-length interview. So first of all, for my journey, I have not had to do what she's had to do. I don't think that I had the same amount of damage to my gut that she had. We discussed this in the beginning of the interview, but she had necrotizing fasciitis, which she almost lost her life to. And she also had breast implants that she just recently had removed that was causing a lot of toxicity in her body. So there's a lot of damage there. So you may not fall to my end where I did have a lot of damage, but I was able to do a carnivore diet and use Thrive, who was one of my sponsors. I will link them below, but use their gut health test to measure my progress as I've gone using carnivore, using probiotics, and I have recently added in some foods. I have also been using HCl and digestive enzymes in this process as well. And that's been enough for me to really get an amazing amount of healing to my gut and continue to see improvements. In fact, I have another test that I just did with Thrive a few days ago. So I will make sure that I share those results with you guys as soon as I get them. And all that will be linked below. Sylvia also talks about using Thrive herself as one of the tests that she has done in order to measure her progress in this journey. So if you're looking for a test to measure your progress, I think that's a really good place to start to see what's actually going on in your gut, what bacteria is in there, what you're low on. So again, that will be linked below this video. I also wanted to just throw in there that I don't agree with everything Sylvia says in this video. I don't agree with everything anyone says that I interview, just to be honest with you. But I did find that a lot of what she had to say was valuable. So just again, listen to this video with nuance, putting yourself in the situation. If you're unsure of what's going on with your body, test it out. If you're unsure of what's going on and you've been doing the same thing for a really long time and it's just not working, then perhaps it's time to try something new, something different, which is another reason why I put this interview together for you guys to hopefully give you some ideas. So I hope that this is helpful and I hope you enjoy the interview. Please do leave me a comment below, hit the like button. It helps my channel and helps this information to reach more people. Thanks again for watching. And all right, guys, thank you so much for coming back and tuning in. Today, I have a friend of mine. We have met in real life and we've been virtual friends for a couple of years as well. Her name is Sylvia. She's formerly known as Biohacking Chick on Instagram. And we want to talk about a lot of stuff today. I want to talk about gut healing. She's been on quite a journey with gut healing. She did carnivore for 3 years and she's done so many different experiments. So there's a million things we could talk about today. We're even going to touch on trauma a little bit and how the body has a more difficult time healing when you have not addressed trauma. So we'll discuss that as well. But Sylvia, if you wouldn't mind introducing everybody to you in my audience.
Hello, everyone. So yes, I'm Sylvia on Instagram now. It's just Sylvia. I changed that from Biohacking Chick. But most people know me as that. They still call me that. So yeah, like you mentioned, I'm just very passionate about, human body and just healing really on a deeper level than just, masking the symptoms of whatever is going on. And I see this with many diets, and people go on things like carnivore diet and feel way better, but then when they want to introduce certain things, they go back to having the same issues. So I'm very passionate about just truly healing on a deeper level and just helping people in general.
Yeah, and you have quite a health history yourself, with veganism and mold toxicity, and just you've been through a lot. And
Right. Yeah, that's been a whole another journey that basically messed up my gut even more, because that took it actually started with the spider bite, which then actually I got infected through that with Lyme disease.
mm,
And that was a journey on its own that took a while to figure out. And I was under the impression that you can only get Lyme disease through a
a
tick
tick
bite,
bite. Hmm.
not a spider bite. And then later I learned that that's not the case, and I figured out why I was essentially just sleepwalking, had no energy, and all I wanted to do was stay in bed and just sleep. Basically, I literally, my muscles felt dead, like I had no muscles, and my brain just felt dead. So all of those infections that started from that, I had MRSA, and I was very afraid of taking antibiotics because prior to that, I already been through surgeries and my gut was already in a really bad shape. So when I got the MRSA, I did, when they told me that I need to go on antibiotics and steroids, I did not want to do that. So I just mega dosed with oregano oil, hoping that the infection would go away. And it did on the surface, but it was still lingering deep in my body. And once you have MRSA, the doctors will tell you that there's a huge chance that you will get it again, that
Mm.
that bacteria or the virus is still there, is inside you. So if your immune system goes down, there's a chance that you will get it back. And that's what happened to me, but it happened on the deeper level when it turned into necrotizing fasciitis. And necrotizing fasciitis is way more powerful. It spreads. I cannot tell you how quickly that
Oh,
spread. It started literally with a tiny little something that looked like a zit. The next day, I had essentially like a snake underneath my skin and my abdomen area that was just so swollen, painful, and I was amazed at how quickly it had spread. At that point, I ended up in ER. I had to go through 3 surgeries back to back to clean that up, and I had 2 IVs on each side, actually four. And in each arm, I had antibiotics going into my body on for five days, basically, that I was in ICU because none of the antibiotics were working. The infection kept spreading. It was literally eating through my ribs, and the doctors were afraid that it was going to spread into my lungs and just eat away my lungs. Necrotizing fasciitis essentially eats away your tissue.
wow.
So that was the concern. And after all of that, when I got out of the hospital, my gut was just trash. Like I could drink just plain water, and it was burning so badly, and I just didn't know what to do at that point. And I remember going back to vegan diet at that point, and I already knew that raw vegan diet was not good for my gut, so that was something that I decided I would not do, but I wanted to do like more of the resistant starch type diet, and more like on a carb like fruit heavy side
Mm.
in a way. So I did do that. The cooked vegetables worked pretty okay for me, but then I got into an issue when I started just binge eating again, and
Mm.
my brain was not satisfied. I could literally eat pounds and pounds of vegetables, and I kid you not, I could eat 5 pounds of broccoli in one sitting, and that is
Yeah.
not good for your gut. Vegan or not vegan, no matter the amount of fiber you're consuming, that is not healthy for your mucosal lining whatsoever. So at that point I kind of freaked out because I did go through the bulimia in my earlier years, and then I started feeling like I was reverting back to that. I'm like, there's no way I'm going back to it. And that's kind of when I started the whole carnivore diet. And like I said, and I've been dealing with IBS and Crohn's prior to that, and many, other things that my doctors were like, well, we don't really know what this is. So let's just call this IBS,
Mm.
like what really IBS is like, they kind of like don't want to make it sound like, oh, it's just in your head. Let's just give a name for it. So like, we're going to calm you down a little bit. You have a name for it and you can live with that. But essentially what IBS and Crohn's is, it's just a damaged mucosal lining. And
Mm.
that can happen through so many things. I see women who do struggle with eating disorders, and they
Mm-hmm.
abuse those laxative teas. That will damage your gut lining so badly. And then they struggle with more profound issues from that. And then it's, skin rashes, and then it's eczema, rosacea, things like that. Anything that appears on the skin, it's almost like you can imagine your gut lining, the mucosal lining, which essentially is, if you were to take your hair and cut it in half, that's how thick that is.
Mm.
So just imagine eating even like a bulky meal that has a lot of fiber. That will scrape that pretty badly, So this is my kind of beef with the recommendations with the more fiber, the better, because
Yeah.
it's not true, and I've been experimenting on my own recently, trying to reintroduce certain things because me, like many other people, I could not just do probiotics. And health essentially is all about balance. You want to have balanced protein, balanced fats, balanced carbohydrates. So when you throw off, let's say protein, when you eat too much protein, there's too much nitrogen in your body, and then too much nitrogen will then lower your bile acids. When that happens, then protein goes into undigested into your large colon, and then what happens from that, you get infections like C. diff, and then yes, that protein will ferment in your large intestine, but you don't necessarily want that. There's so many byproducts of that fermentation, like ammonia, and then other things that are just damaging to human body. And it's this gas that essentially is going to make you more tired. It can even cause cancers too. So what they say about large intake of protein and colon cancer is somewhat true, but those things actually can be fixed with a little bit of fiber from like green vegetables. So this is kind of when I shifted my belief that carnivore will fix everything. All you need is just eat meat and fat and some organ meats, and you're gonna be just fine. But this is not what I've been seeing, and just working with so many people and working at the clinic and seeing the extreme health benefits that they get from including just a little bit of fiber.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with fat, and especially now when people try to do the high fat carnivore, and I see this a lot too. The digestion part has so much to do with just digesting the fat on its own, and the inflammation in the body. So and again, going back to the balance, if you throw off the balance with your fats, um, there's a certain fat in the mitochondria. And this is why at the beginning, ketogenic diets are very therapeutic and they work for many people, because that fat, when you upregulate it to a certain level, it's very therapeutic and healing. But as you keep going years and years into ketogenic diet, once that fat gets too accumulated, it can cause a lot of damage, and it actually can cause cancer. So again, this is why I'm very hesitant when it comes to recommending chronic carnivore, chronic ketogenic diet, there's a benefit to going off of that and letting your body to rely on glucose. And we know this also for hormonal health for women. And when you look at seasons, and I know there's a whole ancestral argument, but let's just face this: we're not living in that time anymore. We live in a modern world where women are stressed out. There are single parents who have to take care of their kids. They're stressed out. They have to go to work. They have to worry about, having their kids just being taken care of while they're gone, and now with all this crazy stuff happening, like there there's just a lot of stress when it comes to that, and if you want to go back to the way our ancestors live and people in tribes, Tanzania, whatever, those women live in tribes, first
Right,
of
they
all.
take care of each other.
Exactly. They don't have the time constriction where, oh, I have to be here and there and I have to get this done by certain time. Maybe they wake up in the morning and they're like, okay, let's go gather some berries, So this group of women will go gather berries and some plants, maybe tubers, whatever. And this group of people will take care of the babies and maybe start prepping some food or something like that. And it's very low key. The rest of the day is hanging out with the tribe, maybe dancing, maybe singing. Do we have that on daily basis in our modern world right now?
Plus all the
Where
chemicals and the xenoestrogens and the perfumes and dyes and, the plastic cups and, all the stuff that we pollute our bodies with. And then we're like, well, we should eat ancestrally. It's like, well,
all right, well, then it's time to move out into the wild, find a cave.
yeah, you're not living outdoors.
And good luck with that when you're there all by yourself. Like, how
Right.
is that good for your mental health? So that argument, when I hear that, okay, great. We live in the modern world where we have the modern fruit that is hybridized, that is sweeter than it's ever been. And vegetables are probably more resembling now fruit that they had, fruit that they had back in the day where it was slightly sweet. Now our vegetables are more like fruit.
It's
Like,
so weird that you say that. Sorry to interrupt, but since I've been adding in some different plants, I have had vegetables. I haven't really had a bunch of fruit, but vegetables, I'm like, God, this tastes really sweet. Like after doing carnivore for so long and then actually eating vegetables, they actually taste sweet to me. And I'm like, this is so weird because I didn't grow up thinking that vegetables tasted sweet. But now if I have a little vegetable, I'm like, this is weird. So it's so fun. Sorry to interrupt. It's just like so funny you say that.
yeah, and I've had a little bit of cucumber. I'm like,
Oh yeah,
even
those
that
are
is
sweet.
sweet to me. I'm like, why? And I cannot buy like store-bought vegetables because
No.
my parents, I was spoiled. My parents, even here in the US, they would grow their own vegetables. When you have a vegetable that's grown outside, it has the energy from the sun as well. Not many people think about that, but there's are certain compounds in the fruits that actually grow up in the sun, that we don't know about. Outside of the nutrients, micronutrients, the just calories alone from all of that, there's a certain energy to stuff that's been grown outside in the sun, and you can taste that they're so much more flavorful, and everything is just different when you grow up on that stuff. And then you go buy something, and like cucumber to me from the store tastes like cardboard, like wet cardboard. Like I can't even describe that, but it's not tasty to me at all and not worth it either.
Yeah.
And the part that, going back to like the food in the sun, what's interesting is that, if you leave animal fat just like sitting in the sun for 30 minutes, it actually starts accumulating vitamin D3. When you leave vegetables, certain starches, even for like maybe 45 minutes, it starts accumulating vitamin D2 in it. So
Hmm.
whenever I would see your stories on Instagram and you would have like, you would
Oh,
take
yeah.
pictures like outside, like with the fat. And I'm like, oh, if she only left it out there for like 30 minutes, like she covered in vitamin D3, you know?
I'm gonna try that now. I've got a bunch of suet. I'll just lay it out on the deck
Yeah.
for a little while.
You cannot leave it in the glass because the
Hmm.
glass actually prevents it stops the good rays from the sun and
Ah.
actually leaves same thing when you're driving in a car.
Oh
The
yeah.
the glass actually blocks all the beneficial and only leaves the pretty much dangerous
Hmm.
light. So you can use a saran wrap if you want to do that. It actually works pretty well with saran wrap, but you can just leave it out if you're not afraid of bugs and getting some extra protein on that
You know.
fat. You can do that. But like I sometimes try to do that, and especially like a sweat is so good when you just like leave it in the
A little
sun.
warm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I used to do that with strawberries back in the day when I was vegan. Like I would buy store-bought strawberries and I would just leave them in the sun because they tasted so much better to me. I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, I just, they're a little bit sweeter, more flavorful. And I would do that like without knowing it. But this is why, when you have mushrooms and they're loaded with vitamin D2, I wouldn't say loaded, but they have pretty decent amount of vitamin
Hmm.
D2. But it's the same thing with fat, animal fat, and vitamin D3.
Got
And
it.
the one thing that I'm going off on a tangent, but I was curious about is, there are certain people that do not get the benefit of the sun and doesn't transform into the vitamin D3 in their body. And I was wondering if it has to do with like the amount of body fat in their body, because this is
Hmm.
essentially how we produce vitamin 3 in our bodies. It's just like basically absorption of the sun rays, and it goes through different pathways and it's more complicated. But I was wondering about that a little bit. So I don't know if there's a doctor out there who kind of goes a little bit more deeper into vitamin D3 synthesis and production. That would be cool.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. I know some people who are against vitamin D D3, but
I, I personally, I am on a fence with supplementing with it, but working in the clinic and seeing that the people with severe candida, they
Mhm.
would start supplementing vitamin D3 and their symptoms would just go away. They would change nothing else,
Wow.
just supplementation of vitamin D3, their candida would go away. And
Wow.
it was pretty severe when they like tongue was like coated in that white
Ooh,
film almost like, and they would do everything and anything underneath the sun trying to fix that, and supplementation vitamin D3 fixed it. So
wow.
I like my vitamin D3 from the sun itself
Yeah.
and animal fat, but
Yeah, the
I
jury's still out on that. I feel like I do need to have somebody on to talk a little bit more about it, because I had anyone I talked to in the mineral sphere, like Morley, and then I talked to Barton with Upgraded Formulas, anybody that like deals with minerals, they're against D3 supplementation. And when Morley actually looked at my blood panel, I think my vitamin D3 was like a 50 or something like that, which isn't even super high. But he's like, have you been in the sun a lot? Because I wasn't taking any D3 and it was at the end of summer. I'm like, yeah, I'm in the sun every day, like on purpose. And he's like, oh, you need to stop. I was like, huh? Yeah. I was like, what? He's like, this is way too high. So that got me all confused. And that, just I need to have some more viewpoints on D3, because I do think that there are benefits to it, but I'm not big on supplementing it. I do try to get it from the sun.
and that's what I hear a lot too. It's like my levels were in 40s, and my functional medicine doctor was like, oh my god, this is too low, we need to bring you up to 80.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, which way do you go? This is why people get so confused.
Exactly.
You have the keto camp, you have the carnivore camp, then you
Yeah.
have vegan camp. Fiber is good, fiber is bad. This is good, this is bad. Meat good, meat bad. Vegetables good, and it's like this stupid thinking, like this is bad, you avoid this for the rest of your life, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And I feel like this is where imbalances start happening. And like I said, health is all about balance, and however you find that balance, you want to be there. I'm not saying that with every meal you have to eat a vegetable. I'm not saying that you have to have 4 groups in every single meal. I'm just saying that maybe, especially when it comes to women cycle, maybe treat that as a season. Maybe after, your period, you notice that, you know what, I'm not that hungry. I can fast probably maybe
Mm-hmm.
1 day or 2 days, or maybe just do intermittent fasting for a couple days after, my period. And
Mm-hmm.
then before you ovulate, you stop that. You eat
Right.
more. We know that during ovulation, you need about 300 calories more for your body.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, for me, it's like 3 days around
Yep, it is for me too.
ovulation. It's like I cannot stop eating. I'm like, um, I know it's supposed to be 300 calories, but I feel like eating 3,000 calories right
Yeah. Yeah.
now. So, and I honestly do that. Like I
Yeah.
fill up. Sometimes it's fat. Now I'm able to do carbohydrates, and I actually do better with carbohydrates when I do that. My gut just feels way better with that, And
Yeah.
it took me a while to fix that, and going
Mm-hmm.
back to the whole microbiome and how I, fixed my own without probiotics. Um, Trying to fix the SIBO on its own was a whole journey. And, being so fearful of antibiotics, I did decide to go the xyfloxamine route, or rifamycin, however people call that. There's so many different names for it. So I did go that route. And I've noticed that before I did that, after my explant surgery, they did put me on antibiotics, which I did take. I did not want to have any infections or any
Mm-hmm.
complications. It's a kind of, uh, they essentially go into your breast. They scrape the capsules out. So it's pretty severe, when it comes
Yeah.
to healing afterwards. So I did not want any infections. So I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll take the antibiotics. After the antibiotics, my gut was back to, feeling just horrible. I'm like, I
Mm.
can't eat anything again. And then I started putting on weight. And before that happened, though, I had this like pretty good period. And then I'm like, okay, let's start taking Probiotics to just replenish whatever I lost from the antibiotic use after my surgery. I
Mm-hmm.
started doing that, and things started getting pretty bad with my gut. And I started putting on weight, and it was very fast. And I did not change anything I was eating. I was still eating protein, up my fats a little bit more. And I kind of kept going with that. I did not change any calorie intake. I did not increase anything. So I was starting to worried. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? This has worked for me for so long, and it's failing again. Like, what am I doing wrong? And when you feel tired and just you're sick, and you're willing to just pay whatever amount of money just to be able to function normal
Yeah.
a day, and you start looking to everything and you question everything. So I honestly went into this rabbit hole of just gut health. I went back to school just to study it. I attended different conferences, read so many books on microbiome.
Mm.
Essentially, most of them say the same thing. Um, but I worked with the doctor from the clinic that I consult at right now, and she kind of mentions to me, she's like, Sylvia, I know you know your thing about gut microbiome, but what if those probiotics are causing you problems? And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, I've worked with many clients at this point that had the same problem with SIBO and probiotics, and even things like the soil-based probiotics cause problems. And she got me thinking. I'm like, oh my God, this kind of makes sense, because after the surgery, I started them about maybe a month later, and that's when the problem started happening.
Mm.
So I went on the antibiotic, I stopped the probiotics, and after the round of the antibiotics, the weight started, I probably lost like just 10 pounds of inflammation, and just like this gas almost that was like
Mm-hmm.
constantly, like I felt it was in my body. So that was just alone with antibiotics, just getting rid of that. Then I went on to dissolving the biofilms, the pathogenic biofilms in my body, because I felt like I could just eat and eat. And what the biofilms do, they coat your intestinal tract, and they're essentially feeding themselves, and they're stealing the nutrients from you. And
Mm-hmm.
this will create this vicious cycle of, oh, I'm constantly hungry, like I can eat so much and never be satisfied. And after I did use Dr. Michael Ruscio's
Ratio.
supplement line, minus the probiotics that he's recommending. So I used the antimicrobial stuff, and he has a pretty good oregano oil in there that has it's worked amazing for me. But it's essentially oregano oil, wormwood, I think black walnut. If you want to buy all those things on its own, it comes to be pretty pricey.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I chose his formulations, which I found that were pretty clean and worked well for me. There are different steps in that. I think the second step, whatever he had in the other formulation, I think it included garlic. I don't do well with garlic. I get severe headaches from it, so I would exclude that. But everything else just worked pretty well for me. So that's what I used to dissolve the biofilms, and I was shocked at, once I went through that, without pretty much any side effects aside just like seeing from what I was eliminating through my stool, which was interesting. It was almost like um it was sorry it was almost like this like clear jello in a way,
Mm.
which it was weird. But again, like aside from that, I did not have any headaches. Other I did not have any other side effects from that. So
How long did that take?
it took me, I want to say, almost 2 months
Okay.
that I was on that protocol. And then I was also using EDTA for heavy metals as well, because that's another thing that I've been dealing with for a very long time. And I did chelation with DMSA. DMSA is sulfur based. I do not process sulfur well, so that was not a fun journey. And on top
Mm-mm.
of that, I had to do a lot of sauna. It depleted my body tremendously. But that's another thing. Mercury, if you have mercury in your body, that will
Mm-hmm.
imbalance your hormones. It has to do a lot with gut health as well, and just absorption and, electrolyte balance too. So this is another thing, we can go off on so many tangents when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to gut health, because it is all the chemicals we have in the body that we
Mm-hmm.
absorb through the environment. It is the chemicals that we eat in the food that, let's face it, in our food system, there's so much crap in there that you really don't know what you're ingesting unless you're just eating truly whole food. Maybe growing your own would be the best thing. Glyphosate is everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
organic or not organic, it's just everywhere. And glyphosate was originally patented as a antibiotic, and now it's just being spread, all over everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
on plants, and that's in the soil. And it to avoid that, it's pretty tough job, and this is why doing certain things to detox your body, like sauna and stuff like that, maybe implementing some things to help your detoxification system. And part of that is some plant fiber, so I know in the carnivore community, and this is kind of like my thing with the carnivore community, that we say that plant fiber, when mixed with meat, will absorb the good stuff in the meat, and you're not absorbing as many of the nutrients from the meat if you mix the meat with the fibers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I get that. So how come does the plant anti-nutrients get absorbed even when they're with the fiber and the plant? It works the same way. If you're not absorbing the nutrients from the meat with the fiber, you're not absorbing the anti-nutrients with the plants that you're eating either, because it's trapped in those fibers and then it gets eliminated. Then you get into juicing and stuff like that. Yeah, those things are probably not the greatest because you've eliminated that fiber. So, it's like it goes both ways.
Yeah.
You can totally demonize fibers, but there's benefits to that. There's benefits to fibers when it comes to replenishing your gut microbiome. And there's benefit, especially when you overcook the vegetables, there are more nourishing and feeding to your body, to your physiology. When you're eating green vegetables uncooked, the kind of snappy vegetables like green beans, asparagus, cabbage, those feed your microbiome, the bugs in your gut.
Mm-hmm.
So those are beneficial for that to regenerate your butyrate. And again, butyrate, I do hear a lot about butyrate, that on carnivore diet you can get that through butter, aged cheese. Yes, you can. And you can get that through what's it called? The BHBs.
Oh yeah, the
Ketones,
salts. Yeah.
right. Yes, you can, but it works different
Mm-hmm.
pathways. And through that, you have different byproducts. When the protein ferments in your gut, like I mentioned before, produces totally different effect that is not beneficial. And essentially, our bodies, the microbes in our gut, prefer plant fibers, and I'm not talking about grains. I'm not talking about something crazy like, pizza that, like, yeah, oh yeah, I'm gonna have my, whole wheat, whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about things like green vegetables, maybe
Mm-hmm.
some healthy carbs like squashes that most people are okay with, but again, most people are, but then I wasn't. Like, I could have a little bit of
Yeah.
pressure cooked squash, and my joint pain would be so severe I would not be able to walk for 2 weeks, so, and I would have wrist pain from that. And now
Yeah.
that I have healed my gut, I can literally eat almost anything,
Yeah, see,
but
that's the
it's fine.
problem with people in the carnivore community. And, that diet did help me to quiet down all the symptoms in my body. I mean, I was so miserable. My quality of life sucked. I couldn't do yoga. Like, everything was so inflamed all the time. So going carnivore was amazing to me and so helpful. But what sucked is that when I did decide, you know what, I want to try to introduce a little bit of rice. I want to introduce, that's what I tried to do. And my face broke out, like my skin broke out everywhere. It was crazy. And I used to eat tons of rice before I did carnivore. It wasn't like, it didn't cause that. I mean, I would get reactions from like Brussels sprouts and like all the vegetables and stuff, but not rice. Rice is so benign.
Especially
Um,
white rice.
yeah, white rice. And
Yeah, we know that the brown. I know that.
yeah, I wouldn't touch brown rice.
Yeah, brown
No,
rice is you get all the fiber,
no,
but in the husk, the arsenic accumulates.
arsenic. Yeah.
But then again, I was totally fine with white rice, surprisingly, even when I was going through a lot of gut issues. And I did experiment with white rice and I was fine with it. But then I was also doing the heavy metal testing,
Mm,
and I was eating white rice maybe twice a week,
hmm.
and just a little bit. And then I did the heavy metal test, retest, and I started noticing very high levels of arsenic from white
Oh,
rice. When
wow.
they tell you that white rice is very low in arsenic. So I went off of it. I'm like, okay, I do feel kind of good with white rice, but you know what? Like, I don't want to start I'm already loaded with mercury and lead. I don't want to add arsenic to it. So, and the thing with arsenic is that it kind of like you can detox that pretty quickly, unlike mercury and lead. So I just stopped eating it, and I'm like, I'm gonna find other ways. I'm gonna finally heal that gut and be able to eat maybe some berries, maybe eat some healthy vegetables, and just keep growing that microbiome with food and not probiotics. So that was like, it took so many experimentations with everything. And now I'm wearing the continuous glucose meter, just because, like I said, I started adding some berries here and there. And I was afraid of the glucose spikes because I've had them before. And when before on Carnivore, I would add in honey when I was
I remember that.
oh my gosh, it was, if I had 24 grams of honey, my glucose would go up to 240. Would be this huge spike and this huge drop.
Crash, yeah.
It was so bad, Sarah. I remember I went to the gym afterwards thinking like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have some honey and then I'm gonna lift. I got so nauseous. I didn't know if I was gonna start throwing up or if I was gonna just spend the rest of the day on a toilet. It was so bad, and I thought I was gonna faint and everything in between. So that's how it ended for me. And recently, I did retest, and I was totally fine and went up to 120. I had a healthy spike, slowly went back down. Everything was fine. So it kind of shows you that once you fix the butyrate transport, regrow the butyrate, fix your mucosal lining, and there's the order of operations. You first have to heal your mucosal lining. You have to, once you heal your mucosal lining, your butyrate transport is going to start working. That's when you can start implementing a little bit of more fiber. Once that's working, your bifidobacteria starts regrowing and it's protecting your gut. And then you will also notice more energy because the butyrate bifidobacteria produces your B vitamins. So it's different when the B vitamins are produced from your bifidobacteria, and it's different when you ingest them from exogenous sources like beef liver, muscle meat, seafood, things like that. When they get produced from the bifidobacteria, they get used up into ATP very quickly. This is why when you do have sufficient bifidobacteria, you notice a lot more energy in your body. So I do love eating things like liver for B vitamins and stuff like that. But again, if you don't have the butyrate, if you don't have the bifidobacteria, which to me are pretty much an Akkermansia, I can never say that word.
Akkermansia.
Those three I feel like are the most important things. And then people say who go on a carnivore diet, oh, I went carnivore and all these symptoms went away. And then I wanted to implement some vegetables or maybe berries, and my gut can't handle it. So I'm convinced that carnivore is the way to go. It's like, no, pretty much damaged your gut, depleted your gut from more bifidobacteria. It's more damaged now, and you're not able to tolerate anything at this point. So no, this is not healing. This is just slapping a band-aid on your symptoms. And you really have to dig a little bit deeper into all of that and really, really fix that. Because in carnivore community, we say like, oh, I cannot have dairy. Dairy is bad. Oh, I cannot have carrots. Carrots are bad. Vegetables are this bad, that bad. And it's just like this constant, no, maybe it's your gut that's bad. Maybe
I get people constantly on my page if I post something, oh, that's causing it, that's gonna cause a histamine response, and like I'm like, yeah, I struggled like hell with histamine, but the thing is that's not normal, and you can't just like for the rest of your life say histamine, oh, like you can fix that.
So here's another thing about histamines that I found in the clinic that kind of shocked me. Like I've noticed that with myself. SIBO, is it histamines or is it SIBO? What I found, I found it with myself. I fixed my SIBO. All of a sudden, all histamine issues, the intolerance went away. I'm
Hmm.
like, and I started experimenting. I'm like, oh my God, I can have smoked salmon. I can have whatever that was causing issues, like the canned fish and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm okay with that. Like, what's going on? And then I started looking into people in the clinic who were dealing with histamine issues, but we treated them for SIBO because we don't really test for SIBO. There's a test for SIBO that tests for all the three kinds of SIBO. Um, but it's still very new, and
Mm-hmm.
it's for our doctors in the clinic. They're working with the researchers to try to figure out, like, what all that information really means. So if we just suspect the clients having it, we treat them for SIBO with antimicrobials and stuff like that, and usually that works really well. And we noticed that once that has healed, their histamines just went away.
Hmm.
So this is why now I question, is it histamines or is it SIBO? With histamines, another thing is that your butyrate levels are not balanced out. You might not have enough butyrate either. If you don't have enough butyrate in your tract, you're it is the same thing with IBS. When you have IBS and Crohn's disease, your mucosal lining is damaged.
Hmm.
When it's damaged, and you can just, like I mentioned before, you can just throw a bunch of fiber on top of that. You have to start slow, and again, it's a long process. But once you fix that, then the butyrate starts balancing out. Another thing with butyrate is that too little, actually, not too little, but less is actually more healing to keep the tight junctions tight. When you throw in too much butyrate, it actually damages it.
Yeah.
So I see people supplement with butyrate, and I see people do butyrate enemas, which I did see some people benefit from the enemas. But again, it's a fine balance.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fine balance of everything. When you look into research on anything, or the studies on disease, and it's always the loss of balance of this, the lack of balance of that. And the balance thing is huge. It's everything. And you can look at the, cellular level, and you can look at the macro level of just the diet alone, and just that lifestyle and stress levels. Again, stress, it has such huge effect on your microbiome. Sun exposure has huge effect on your microbiome. Just everything, and I'm just like fascinated with the whole with how it all ties in together, and even the electrolyte balance that comes
Mm-hmm.
from microbiome, and I don't want to make it sound like, oh, it's all about microbiome. No, it's not. It's not. It's about taking everything into consideration and balancing your stress levels, balancing your sleep, making sure you sleep enough.
Right.
That has, again, a lot to do with the health of your microbiome. So there's a lot of things, and I know, I apologize, I go off on tangents, but there's just like so many things that goes into health, and not just the health of our guts, but in general, that I get very passionate, and I just start going everywhere, like.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. And I feel like one thing, for people to know is that I think it does depend on how damaged your gut was going in, because my gut was damaged. I didn't have nearly the same damage that you did. I had damage from alcohol, from prescription drugs, from stress, but I didn't have, I think, the same extensive damage that you did. So going carnivore helped a lot. And then I was able to actually start seeing improvements when I added probiotics. And that did help me. and I have seen my diversity go up. I lost weight adding probiotics. And now I was like, okay, it's time to actually start feeding this bacteria I'm putting in my gut. Cause like you can't just do, I think, I mean, I could be wrong here, but I don't think you can just,
you're right.
you
You're
can't
right.
just do carnivore and probiotics as a long-term solution. Like short term, you know, I use the Thrive gut health test. I did a gut health test before I started just doing carnivore. I did carnivore with the probiotics and I tested again. I saw my Akkermansia go up. I saw all the good bacteria go up. But then it's like kind of instinctively, I'm like, now I need to start adding in some fiber to start feeding this bacteria because it's not going to do any good if you just get, you know, and it will eventually create dysbiosis.
Absolutely.
If you're just doing a carnivore diet and probiotics, you have to have some prebiotic fiber, you have to have butyrate. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at in my journey now. Is like, you know, I have days every now and then where I just do carnivore, and I think that's okay. But I do have cooked vegetables. I haven't done a lot with resistant starch. That is my next little thing that I want to play with. But
I actually have experimented with resistant starch, and I was shocked how well I feel. So we know there are prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics. Prebiotics is the food for probiotics, and postbiotics is essentially almost like the gas that the probiotics eliminate. The gas, it's actually very healing to us, and it has healing effects on the microbiome. And there's again this notion in carnivore community that if you don't have gas, that's, you know, you've healed, you know, and it's not true. But then, you know, it shouldn't be gas that will, when you pass it, it kills other people. And
Yeah, that's how it used to be before carnivore.
exactly. And it shouldn't be a gas that it's so much that it makes you feel like you're getting a heart attack, or you cannot sit, you have to like keep walking and passing the gas. It should not be like that. It literally should be just air that you pass. And the same thing with your poop. If you fix your microbial diversity, your poop should not smell. And I've noticed that about myself. It's like I can literally just, it's like passing air, you know. And like I said, that is actually therapeutic for your gut microbiome. So if you're carnivore and you're proud of yourself for not having any gas, I would question that a little bit, you know. So
I wonder if that goes along the same line of like body odor too. I've never been able to figure out, like, I went carnivore and I quit using deodorant, and I haven't used deodorant in like 2.5 years now. And I was thinking, like, when I add plants back, oh my gosh, I'm worried that I'm going to have to use deodorant again, but I haven't, which has been really cool. Except one time I have a video coming out, like, I think tomorrow, where I talk about this. I decided I would have some peppers and onions. I made like a little stir fry for my daughter and my husband. And I'm like, I can handle the nightshades, no big deal. And I kid you not, the next morning I was like, oh my God.
No, it's not even the onion, because the onion smells.
It's not the onions, it was the nightshades.
It's the sulfur.
Yeah.
You know,
oh yeah.
if your body, if you don't have,
I've always had an issue with sulfur.
Yes.
That's like on my medical charts, like allergic to sulfur drugs.
Yeah. Same for me. And that's why you probably don't do well with Brussels sprouts and stuff like that.
Cashews, Brussels sprout. I can do Brussels sprouts okay now. They have to be shredded and cooked really, really well. But I don't go near cashews. Like, I've had enough.
Oh, I love cashews. Oh my God. I don't eat them, but I love them. I mean, just the whole environmental issues when it comes to nuts and cashews and how they're sourced. Like, they're amazing, but I stay away from them.
Yeah.
And then the mold and mycotoxins and all that.
Yeah.
That's another whole story about that. But yeah, onions, they have a lot of the inulin and the
I can do onions. I do like onions and beef for myself.
This is my next step, just to try like do In Poland, we used to do fried liver with like caramelized onions and
Oh, yeah.
butter. Like this is just like my I want to go back to be able to eating that. I don't think I'm there yet though, but
Yeah.
I did experiment with the resistant starch, and I was surprised how good my gut felt. And
Wow.
the resistant starch that I actually used was from cold garbanzo beans, and I never
Oh,
thought I could eat garbanzo beans or
that,
any bean
oh,
for that matter.
no.
I think we had that conversation about beans on our first podcast together when it was just like fermentation,
Yeah, it was
just like
horrible.
and yeah, now that you know everything is working well in my gut, garbanzo beans, cooled garbanzo beans, because that's how you
Yeah.
accumulate that
Hmm.
resistant starch, actually worked so amazingly, and it
Wow.
made my gut feel like warm and kind of fuzzy, and I'm like, this feels really good. And once I started adding that in, I actually started losing even more weight. So I had this
Hmm.
whole MCT experiment, and that I
Yeah,
talked
I saw that with Vanessa. I'm like, there's not going to
about.
be any powdered MCTs left on the shelves after this episode.
Trust me, I stocked up before like I started sending out the the links to that MCT, because
Yeah, I was.
that's the only MCT that it's like it's almost soothing for me.
Which
And
one is it? I'm curious. I'll have to
yeah,
link it
I
below.
cannot remember the brand name. It's
Hmm.
something micro something, and I cannot ever remember that. I'm horrible with names and in general. So, but I can send you the
Yeah, send it to me so I can link it.
I'll
Yeah.
probably do a story on my Instagram, because everybody's been asking like how I use it, how I make it.
Hmm.
So I'll probably do that, or maybe do a post, because I'm literally bombarded with
Yeah.
questions about how I do it, how I make it, how often, this and that. So I have to do that. Um, but anyway, after all of that MCT experimentation and lamb experimentation, I started adding in resistant starch, and that was in the form of just cold beans. And it was just a little bit at the beginning, and I noticed it actually, I started losing even more weight.
Hmm.
And, you know, there's a lot of information out there about like the resistant starch from cold potatoes. Like people can eat so much of it and never gain weight. I did try cold potatoes a long time ago, but that was just like a fart bomb, like
Yeah.
uncomfortable. It was just
Those
too
have to be white potatoes too. You can't do
much.
the sweet potato or Japanese sweet potato. They have to be white.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it has to be white. And the more you actually warm them up and cool them down, so if the more you do it, the more resistant starch it accumulates.
Hmm.
But for me, that hasn't worked in the past, and I'm kind of hesitant to trying it
Hmm.
now. So I'm kind of sticking to beans, and it's shocking to me because in the past, like beans caused so much uh, joint pain and just headaches and stuff like that. So not having any issues whatsoever, no zits, no blemishes, nothing out of it. I'm like, I'll take it. And my gut actually
Yeah.
feels amazing. I'm like, I'm good with that. And I used to actually love lentils.
Oh, I
Um,
loved them. That was my last stint before Carnivore was a
that,
crock pot full of lentil soup that I had made. I had soaked the lentils and like I was just I was so excited about it and it messed me up so bad that that was like the last thing I had before I started Carnivore. I was like, that's it. I got to do this Carnivore thing because like I can't handle that anything now.
and again, we come to these conclusions like this is bad for me.
Hmm.
Actually, it's bad for me. But if you have the microbes to metabolize those oxalates, you're not
Yeah.
problems. You're not gonna have any problems with lectins. If your gut is healthy, you're not gonna have any problems with the plant toxins whatsoever, you know. But again, there are steps. Heal your mucosal lining, your butyrate transport is gonna fix. Then you're gonna have the right regrow butyrate, regrow bifidobacteria, and then you can go back to eating normal or whatever, I'm not recommending people go and eat junk food, because
No.
that will have other consequences. And even like the not organic fruits and vegetables, if they're soaked in glyphosates, that's essentially taking antibiotic on daily basis, and that's gonna mess up your gut again. So taking care of your gut is huge, and it does take a little bit more planning ahead and stuff like that. And it can be a long journey. I started very slow, and I'll probably do a post about how to start slow without using probiotics, because from what I've seen, probiotics work for some people, they cause so many problems to other people. So if you can fix it with food alone, I think that's a good route to go. There are some people who have absolutely zero bifidobacteria, zero, and that might be when people should consider working with a professional gut doctor who can start implementing that and start regrowing it that way. Because if you're at that zero, I don't think, if you can't feed it, then you have to somehow start just implement it or inject it in order for it to just even start growing.
Yeah. And I saw you just did recently a Thrive gut health test that
Yes.
showed that you were in pretty good shape, right?
Yeah, I was actually surprised that I was like at 74% like healthy. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing about that though is the what they call it, like the different populations. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
really pay attention to that so much. I'm only paying attention to bifidobacteria,
Yeah.
Akkermansia, and then butyrate.
Yeah,
Those
those are
are
the ones I was looking at when I did mine too, because some of those you're like,
yeah.
we haven't done as enough research on a lot of
Right.
this stuff.
And we don't know like how, if this certain bacteria that you have and somebody else doesn't have, like is this like you must have it in order for,
Right.
like we don't know that. What
Right.
we know is bifidobacteria we get when we are born and we are breastfed, and we're healthy. Bifidobacteria is high, and as we age it gets lower and lower and
Mm-hmm.
lower. And that's when we start aging and noticing like, oh, I cannot eat this anymore, I cannot eat
Mm-hmm.
that anymore. And this is why it's important to keep feeding it, to keep you know making sure that it's there. And
Yeah.
carnivore diet will not do that.
Nope.
Fasting will not do that. You're actually
Mm-mm.
starving your microbiome when you're fasting. Yes, you're eliminating a lot of inflammatory markers, and you're still healing, but you're not really healing your gut. And yes, you can increase your akkermansia with fasting, but then you have to take certain steps in order to keep healing.
Keep
So
it.
yeah, exactly. Like you said, the smart thing you're doing, you were doing probiotics, you were doing fine with that, but now you have to keep feeding it.
Yeah, you can't just keep taking a probiotic.
Exactly. I mean, like I love
I still take one, but I'm also adding in foods
exactly. And then
to
you
feed
test,
that
and you
bacteria.
do testing, and you
Yep.
check that. Not many
Yep.
people have the funds to do that. And I do love Thrive, but at the same time, like the probiotic subscription, all that, like I looked
Yeah,
into.
I don't get their probiotics anymore. I use the Megaspore is what I'm
Oh,
using now.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So we had few people who do well with Megasport. Other people actually
Some people don't do well and they need
don't
to
do
take the
well. So
IgG
again,
along
yeah,
with it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I started with the Thrive. Then I went to Megasport with IgG. That's what I'm doing right now and it's
I
working
know,
well.
I know. Nutrition with Judy. I think I did not know that at the beginning, but I think she mentioned that she's been helping a lot of people
Hmm.
using Megaspore. So again, we cannot say all probiotics are bad and all
Right.
probiotics are going to cause SIBO. No,
No.
there's you have to work with somebody or figure
Hmm.
out yourself where you at, and then work from there. Like it's simple to put a post on Instagram and say something, and then people, like even from my own post, like people
Oh, they
come
They
from
freak
cooking.
out. Yeah.
Oh my God, they're like, oh, what are you saying? That carnivore is bad? Like, what are you turning on the carnivore community? I'm like, no,
Yeah.
carnivore has so many good uses. It
Yeah.
helps heal my brain, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
It lower my inflammation. I would not be able to even, work on my trauma if I was still in that constant inflammation state,
Mm-hmm.
that my brain was in. I wouldn't be even aware of any of that.
Right.
So there's so many therapeutic benefits to carnivore, to keto. But again, it works to a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
After that point, you have to start considering, okay, has it really healed me? Am I using it as a band-aid now?
Mm-hmm.
Or same thing with fasting. Fasting has worked for me for weight loss for so many things, or OMAD has worked for me for so many years. And you're so attached to it. You're
Yeah.
afraid that if I go off of it, I don't have the power to eat normal. And I'm
Right.
going to start binge eating, or I'm
Right.
going to do this, I'm going to do that, and you're just so attached. And when you hear other people question that, and question your belief in it, and it's almost like you get into this like, whoa, like you did not just say that carnivore is bad. Oh my God, unfollow, block, whatever you can do. Like, no, you're against all my beliefs. You're just like attacking me personally. And people get like that.
They do, and I'm trying to, with my platform that I've built, when most people are following me because of carnivore, it's like I have to play this kind of fine dance now of like, yes, I think this is great and I think it's wonderful, but you can't do it all the time. I can't do it forever because for me, when I did the testing, every time I've done testing, I've been able to empirically show on the test that it's time for me to do something else. And you can't, people are like, oh, these people have been doing carnivore for all these years. And I'm like, I don't know what their gut microbiome looks like. I don't know what their hair tissue mineral analysis looks like. They are going to believe what they want to believe. And ultimately, you have to test on yourself. If you're not sure, go get a gut health test. If you're not sure, go get a hair tissue mineral test. Like, don't just go on someone on the internet that says they've been doing this for X amount of years and say they're healthy, so I'm fine.
I love you, Sarah, because and I love your podcast and your platform and everything that you're doing, and you're open with everybody, and you're like, here's my hormone test, here's
Yeah.
my electrolyte test, here's my gut test. And you're open about that, and you're going out of your way to find that out, and you're having people on your podcast that are challenging you and
Mm-hmm.
your own beliefs. And for me, when I switched my handle on Instagram, everybody was like, oh, where's biohacking chick? Oh, why did you change it? Because everybody knew me as this carnivore girl,
Mm-hmm.
and and I got to a point to where I'm like, you know what, like I just want to be my name. Like I don't want to have that biohacking or carnivore like attached to me.
Mm-hmm.
And many women that respond to me and other people saying like, well, I followed you because of carnivore and your advice. And I'm like, well, then unfollow me. I
Right.
do not make like Instagram is not my source of income,
Mm-hmm.
and teaching people on Instagram is not. But I do like sharing certain information that I do learn through my own experiments and my own working at the clinic, and just going back to school and learning stuff and just being open-minded. And
Yeah.
again, like this is what I love about you, because there's not so many, I really don't know that many people out there, especially in the carnivore community, who are willing to test and experiment as much as you do and are open about it. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, here's my microbiome. It freaking sucks. Well, let's do something about it. Maybe
Right.
carnivore is not the way. Maybe keto is not the way,
Yeah.
and you're doing it and you're out there. And I really appreciate that from you. And I'm just like sending people your way. I'm like, well,
Oh.
this out, Sarah has this guest on her podcast, like about electrolytes. It's
Yeah.
like, yes, all these tests are not perfect. They're not
Right.
perfect. There's no test that's absolutely perfect. There's no gadget out there that's going to tell you everything about your health, you know, but those are just some things that you can use to track improvement or maybe no improvement, or those are things that you can test here and there and go from there. And
Right.
like, for example, the gut microbiome test, you can see where you're at, where you starting at, and then you can retest after making some changes, and then you can see progress, you
Mm-hmm.
know, or lack of, you know,
Right.
then you know, okay, this is not working, let's do something else.
Yep.
So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No,
Yeah, I know, I'm just like
I know. It's crazy though, because both of us were just like carnivore camp for years, and people follow us because of that. And it can be really scary to stand up and just say, well, everything, this didn't heal everything. And because that's a really popular, sexy message, is
oh,
like,
oh yeah.
carnivore healed me. And you see it everywhere. And then you're like, okay, this is great. Like, I was there a year in, I was there at this time, but then let's talk in a couple of years. Like, let's
Yeah.
get some actual real testing done besides maybe some blood work, and like, let's really talk.
And then you have people who only come to carnivore because of weight loss, but then
Right. And then that's not a
weight
good
loss
idea.
is so much more powerful where you actually implement plant fibers in it.
Yeah. For
And
me, weight loss never happened on carnivore. I had weight gain on carnivore.
there you
That's why I started fasting. That's
yeah,
why I got obsessed with
and that's
fasting,
another
because
yeah,
I was like, yeah,
fasting or saunas and then cold showers that
yeah,
I
I
see
did.
like being abused. I see a lot of young women do that, like women in their 20s, and they're not taking their cycle into consideration.
No.
We do it very frequently
Yeah.
too. I'm not saying cold showers are bad, because again, I'm gonna get this like, oh, are you saying nobody? No, I'm not saying that. They're good. They can be beneficial if utilized in a smart way.
Yeah.
And you have to know when it's beneficial for you.
Yeah, Dr. Mindy Pels, when she was on my podcast, she and I were talking about that. No cold showers the week before your cycle, no cold showers during ovulation. Don't do cold therapy during those times. It's too stressful on your body. We have to learn at those times of the month, we have to keep our stress low. You know, if you're going to do carb cycling, that's usually a better time to do it for your hormones. We're not like little men where we can just do things all the time.
Exactly. And we there's so many men in the health space alone. And
Mm-hmm.
it all starts pretty much with them when they start experimenting. And it started with the intermittent fasting, the
Mm-hmm.
fasting general, the men in the carnivore community who will write books about just eat high protein. You don't
Mm-hmm.
need fat. You can mess up your adrenals and
Oh
your
yeah.
whole, oh my gosh, your cortisol levels. You're not going to be sleeping. And I did that.
Oh
It
yeah.
did work for me for some time, but then my body just started crashing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy how resilient our bodies
Oh
are and
yeah.
adaptable as well. Because I did do high protein for almost a year, if not longer, and it has worked fine for me. But I
Yeah.
have to eat a lot of protein.
Yeah.
And that again, I have a lot of genetic SNPs that are showing a lot of like Crohn's disease type stuff, colon cancer type stuff. And the things I have learned now about the protein, I'm like, well, I don't want to really risk that. You know,
Yeah.
if I can wash my colon with a little bit of fiber that will prevent those compounds to form in there in the first place, I'm fine with that. Especially
Yeah.
now that my gut is okay with a little bit of fiber. And again, I'm not saying eat pounds of broccoli or eat pounds of whatever. You know, for me, when I did leptin reset with Dr. Cruz, his recommendations were eat a lot of meat, essentially. Well, not a lot, but decent amount of protein and just a little bit of green vegetable. And for me, that was 3 spares of asparagus. And I kid you not, my gut was feeling so good. Just 3 spares of asparagus. That's all it took for it to have amazing bowel movements in the
Yeah.
morning and just keep everything moving inside. Because when you're not having a bowel movement, everything is stagnant in there.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you're not going to be losing weight. And then you're going to be accumulating all that fermentation in there that you really don't want there. That's going to be
Yeah.
producing all these byproducts that are going to making you feel toxic, sleepy, tired all day long. So yeah, fiber in the microbiome community is a way overemphasized,
Yeah. Way over.
way
Yeah.
overemphasized, and it
Yeah.
can damage your mucosal lining if you overdo it. And it's the same thing with resistant starch. If you overdo it, you're going to start noticing negative effects from
Yeah.
that as well. So um, yeah, it shouldn't be all nothing. It shouldn't be
No.
crazy talk like no this, no that. And all of these diets are essentially like carnivore, no plants, vegan, no meat food, no meat, or no animal
Animal
food.
foods. Yeah.
Nothing. It's like, no, let's just like meet in the middle, let's
Right.
all meet in the middle, and maybe a little bit of plants is good, a little bit of berries are good. Like your body likes glucose too. I know there's a whole issue with the fructose, and the studies that I've seen on fructose, it's isolated fructose. It's a lot of it to injected into mice, or um, even in human studies, it's just isolated compounds. We're forgetting polyphenols that actually work differently when combined with fructose, and glucose works totally different in combination of a little bit of fiber too in our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And actually polyphenols, they'll block certain absorption of certain things. If you take a little berries before you eat a fatty meal, you're actually not absorbing as many calories, you're not absorbing as much fat either. So when it comes to weight loss, things like berries, things like green vegetables are actually beneficial.
Yeah.
And you can do way better than if you're trying just to do it on carnivore alone.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's a couple of things, and we should probably close pretty soon because we could talk
We
forever,
haven't
but
even touched on the trauma
I
part.
know, I know. But just to touch on the fiber thing and the weight loss and blood sugar, for me, adding in a little bit of fiber, the benefits I've seen, and I got to do a video on this soon, is like my blood sugar is so much more stable now, and my satiety is so much better. When I was just doing carnivore, I could eat and I was just like still hungry. I'm like, I just ate a lot of food and I'm trying to not eat a million calories a day, but I could still keep going. And with some fiber in my diet, and doing the gut healing that I've been doing, I'm not hungry all the time. My blood sugar is more stable. So, and I haven't been doing like a bunch of squash or berries or anything. That may be experiment down the road. But for now, where I'm at, I'm like, this is a lot better. And I was trying so hard to lose weight on carnivore. It's so
Yeah,
hard. And
I
I just couldn't,
I saw your post of your truffles with the you did avocado and something. I'm
And
like,
romaine.
oh, so good. And sometimes I would crave romaine, like a
Yes. I
or
love
iceberg
romaine.
lettuce. I'm like, that has probably like zero nutritional value, but I'm just sometimes like I would crave that.
Mm,
And those are like romaine and iceberg lettuces were like the only things that I could that I did well with. But then to your point about the blood sugar, when I added the cold garbanzo beans,
mhm.
my blood sugar actually would like take a little dip and then just like level out. And
Wow.
it was interesting how to see that it would instead of going up, it
Way
would just
up.
actually take a slow dip and just like stay even. So there's some things, benefits to resistant starches and other
Yeah.
things in the plant community, and it's not nothing, or like with carnivore, zero, like zero. Even coffee is bad because that's a plant
Yeah.
juice, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we have to learn to look at things with just a little bit more nuance and then just to really start to listen to our own bodies rather than
Yeah.
All the
Balance.
information that's out there is just overwhelming. But then you get them too, because I get so many women. I can't lose weight. I switched to carnivore and I gain weight and I don't feel good and I'm hypoglycemic. And I'm like,
And then the hormonal issues
yeah, the
start.
hormonal
And
issues. And
I work with a lot of ER doctors and a lot of nurses that work in the ER. Try to put them on carnivore diet that's when their guts are not working and they can't digest the fat. That's a
oh,
whole,
that's a mess.
it's a such mess. Their cortisol just gets out of whack.
Oh, yeah.
They're not sleeping because they're
Mhm.
constantly wired. It's a mess. This is where, and in this environment, let's take advantage of the carbs. They're good. Like
Right.
there's good carbs. Again, I'm not saying go eat donuts, or things
Yeah.
like that. Just whole food
Yeah.
carbohydrates, it's if your gut is healed, if you're at that state where you're just wanting to lose a few pounds, carbs are good.
Yeah.
Like they're good.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're going to have to get back together to talk more about trauma. We didn't even touch on that in this. We just talked all about the gut, which is like my passion right now of like trying to learn about it and heal it. So, thank you for coming on and talking. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you, want to follow you?
Pretty much just on Instagram at Syltabor. That's Syltabor. That's my handle. If you want to reach out about, the gut healing protocol that we're using at the clinic, that's been very beneficial to people. Reach out to me through message on Instagram. I'll do my best to respond. And that's pretty much it. I'm trying to hide everywhere else. So Instagram is already too much.
I know,
And
right?
I don't have, half the followers you have. So I don't know how you do all of this podcast, the YouTube, the Instagram. I mean, that's a lot of work. Too
It's a
much work.
lot. It's fun though. It's a lot of fun. If it wasn't fun, I would stop. So if
Oh,
it stops becoming fun, then
yeah.
peace. But yeah.
Sometimes I just want to disappear from Instagram, and
Yeah.
but I do get a lot of like just feeling good for sharing and helping people. Even though, like I said, I don't have that many followers, but whatever I can do to help, like I'll just keep it for now, and we'll see as time
Awesome.
goes by.
Well, thank you very much for coming on and talking today. It was great to have you.
Thank you, Sarah.
And have a wonderful rest of your day. saying like people